gosh, hello everybody. So actually, I know we're all in fashion, but don't you think we look more like a boy band?
Is there water there?
Before...
What happened?
Which one's going to do a first solo album? Before we start, we've only got like 23 minutes, but do us a favor. It's been it's getting towards the end of the day. It's been very calm, very relaxed, and very informative. But it hasn't been a lot of like jump up energy. So do me a favor right now. Turn to the left and turn to the right, and introduce yourself to the person next to you, because you might not already know them. So talk to them right now. You've got 1 minute.
Good to be on.
Yeah.
Is my
Prabal,
mic
how
on?
are you, sir? Nice to meet you, mate. Pleasure. All right. Come on, we've only got 22 minutes now.
All right.
All right, put a lid on it. Put a ring on it. So you've already, I'm sure you've already had a great introduction of these learned gentlemen here. My name's Simon Collins. I used to be the Dean of Parsons and a fashion designer, and we're here to talk about fashion for a cause. Now, you know how often you hear in the newspapers, well, you should shut up about politics because you're an actor, or you're a fashion designer, and then we have a reality star in the White House. So clearly all bets are off, and everyone's entitled to an opinion, and it's very important that we exercise that opinion. Now, you guys have, in your own different ways, have exercised your opinions on the causes that you support through your work. So why don't we start by just a minute or two on some of the things that you've done. Max, let's start with you.
What we have done, I think in our last show, especially we're from New York, and our brand is based out of New York, and we're based in the United States. And everything that's going on in the States, I think, really hit home for us. And us being a small brand, really our only voice is using our brand. And that's, because it's very personal to us, Dao-Yi and I. So in our last runway show, the collection took form of like a new Americana and the concept. And we did something that was like, playing off the Trump hats of Make America Great. Again, we did Make America New York, because we love New York. We're born and raised in New York. And the idea of New York is so much of a melting pot and the convergence, and everything is in New York that America can't be like separated. New York is so together, and then we wanted to, really express that on our last runway show. So that was something we did very recently, and I think we ended up selling the hats after the runway show, and 100% of the proceeds went to the ACLU. And it was like something that I think we did. It wasn't for money, and like we actually weren't even going to sell the hats, but the demand was so high after the show that we ended up doing it and making sure that the proceeds went. And that's just us using our brand as our voice, because it's probably louder than just us talking to each other, or like using Twitter. Or
So on the subject of that, then we've talked about this before as we warmed up, and today has been all about people who feel very much the same, sharing with each other. And one of the things that's been on my mind is, where's the dissenting voices? So did you get any negative feedback from the positions that you two guys took, Dao?
Not directly. I don't think I think fashion is everyone is so nice and polite,
Are we working in the same industry? I just want to be sure about.
Did you hear that? Fashion
at least
nice
to
and
each other.
polite.
At least right. So yeah, I think that the feedback was positive for the most part.
Did you find that do you think that you reached anyone that wouldn't necessarily automatically support you anyway? Because one of the big criticisms is that, but forgive us, right? Most of what we talk about is because we're all based in the US, but I think it's a microcosm of what's happening around the world. And one of the criticisms is that we as liberals are not really engaging with the other side.
Sure.
So do you think that what you guys did reached anybody?
Well, yeah, I mean, we took that certainly into consideration, even to the extent of our set design was, we made the runway considerably small. So you had to sit sort of face to face across potentially from, your competitor as a buyer, as a retailer, or as an editor. So that whole sentiment of, like that, of course you would find sort of this bubble of liberalism in fashion in New York City during Fashion Week. Of course, that's a safe place for a lot of people. And so we wanted to make it feel uncomfortable physically and also
sonically too.
Yeah. Also, conceptually, we wanted to make the whole thing feel really uncomfortable, because I think that that's, at heart, That's at the heart of what sort of that we're all talking about, is that we can all be in this auditorium and in this room, sort of agreeing with each other and patting each other on the back, and that won't really get us anywhere. You know, that we have to be able to extend the conversation to people who might not agree with us, we might not normally address. So to answer your question, you know, I think we saw feedback on our Instagram handle. I guess that's probably the closest thing where we could get a lot of voices nationally and internationally. And there was definitely some dissent there. There was, you know, people didn't get it, or, you know, why are you, you know, why this isn't the forum for it. Fashion has no place, or you know, even sort of right-wing supporters. So
yeah. So John, you're from the West Coast, and we're all East Coast, so we can obviously never be friends. But what's the experience been like over there? Because it's been very documented in New York. I mean, California is also a bubble of people that realize climate change actually exists, etc.
Yeah,
so where there have been protests, what's the experience been like?
Yeah, I mean, we feel it every day in California. I mean, this winter specifically, we've been blessed with rain, but we're coming off the worst drought in history. And you know, I think for Kelly and I, my partner is Kelly Slater, professional surfer, and when we started Outerknown, it was sort of a place where we could put all of these different things that frustrated us. Being surfers, a lot of that was environmental, and that was sort of something that we, you know, over the last few years, it was really important to not only have a place where we could funnel all that, but build a business, build a company that its core was around sustainability. So I think with the recent political climate, that's only amplified how important the foundation of environmentalism is, and all of the things that we built the brand on. So Inauguration Day earlier this year, in 24 hours, we decided that we were going to make a T-shirt that said, "Tides turn, we rise." And 100% of the proceeds of those T-shirts would go to the Ocean Conservancy to go directly back to cleaning up the oceans. So I think you know, coming from where we're coming, but you know, thinking globally, there's so many different things that we're all thinking about today. For us, Outerknown is a place to put those frustrations and, you know, have something every day that's like true, tangible activism. And that's
so.
Really
the thing that concerns me, though, is that, you know, much of what you hear about is about raising money to fight the new agenda, right? It's to further defend the rights, but also kind of further the disagreement. And I'm not yet hearing very much about genuine outreach to the other side to try and find common ground. So, Prabal, from your point of view, I'm going to ask you a very blunt question, which we didn't prep for, but would you dress the First Lady?
No
pressure.
You know, it's thanks for that.
Prabal's never going to speak to me again. You know what? We'll come back to that.
No.
We want to know. We want to know.
It's a tough.
So this was
question.
something that, you know, I just recently did an interview with. It was with NBC, and we were talking about the former First Lady, where I had an opportunity to address a lot of time, Michelle Obama. And then they asked me the same question. I'm going to repeat what I said then, which was really like thrown at me at on live television, and I said, you know, as a brand, as a person, I believe in diversity, I believe in inclusion, I believe, you know, I don't believe in discrimination, and that's what I stand for, what the brand stands for. Knowing, and my own story as an immigrant coming from Nepal, and you know, chasing the American dream and realizing it, that was pretty much part of my whole storyline, and that's what the brand stands for. So if the First Lady, knowing those brand values, still wants to be dressed by me, I would like to believe she's showing silently yet solidarity towards us, and if that's the case, then I'll dress her.
That's a very smart answer, man.
It was really, I mean, that's what I believe, you know. Yeah.
I think that the better question is, would you dress Ivanka as opposed to the First Lady? Because I think that Melania is very much, you know, she didn't choose to sort of be the First Lady of the White House, but Ivanka has stepped into sort of the circle, the political circle actually having a position there.
To that
So-
thing, I mean, I've known Ivanka through my work for a long time. I was a design director at Bill Blass, so I've had a designer-client relationship, and she's been buying my collection, through the stores and everything. So she's been wearing it. They haven't made any requests to us, and it's the same. I stand by the same thing. If those are the things that she believes in, and my thing, what I've realized is, when we are talking about, you're talking about the reaching out to the other side, we're living in the most challenging times right now. I actively was campaigning for Hillary Clinton. I was actively out there, whether through my social media and everything, because I truly believed she was a better candidate. But the reality is something else right now. So for me, and we're all panicking, and for me, just going back to your first question that you asked them, when I went, what I realized, and I started my brand with the idea of luxury brand with a soul. And what I mean by that is an ability to see someone, ability to be present, ability to realize what's happening and react. And so with that in mind, I went to the Women's March in New York. That happened. And the first time in my entire life, I saw a gathering of human beings really fighting and speaking out and everything, and yet without any violence. That to me, and it required women. It
true,
required women to come together to do that.
I want to.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we keep this focused on the celebration of what can be done with fashion for a cause.
No, that's what I'm saying.
I think that's a wonderful example, because you're right. And I went on that march too, and I've never been on a march before. Yeah. And I took my infant son, and wouldn't typically do that on a march. But you're right, it was 100% positive.
It was, absolutely. And the thing is also, what you have to realize is also, we as designers, I always have believed this, we have a platform, we have an audience, even if it's an audience of one. I do believe that we have a responsibility to speak up.
So those of us that saw the conversation this morning with Vanessa and the gentleman from Tiffany's. Tiffany's just took out an ad in the New York Times and on social media, and it's clearly a response to the current political climate. It is, and they very smartly call it a response to science, which of course in itself is a response to the political climate. Now that's Tiffany's. So if you can probably, they would be in the top of the sort of American blue blood, never going to rock the boat brands, and there they are rocking the boat. Yeah. So I thought your answer about addressing the First Lady was very good, very honest. But I have to wonder how far we go with that. Because, for instance, if you were going to do a runway show and they said, oh, and by the way, it's going to be in the Trump Hotel, and it was going to generate revenue for the Trump Hotel.
Trump Hotel.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, as a brand owner of a small brand, and I think we can make that decision. I really stand by my values and principles and everything. And there are certain things that we don't budge about. And the current administration, with their policies and everything, it's dangerous. It's alarming for all of us. But what I don't want to sit here and do is just be the rhetoric of what everyone's been talking about. What we need to be talking about, what are the possibilities now? What are the opportunities now? What can we do now? More than ever, I've lived in New York for 18 years now, and the first time in this year and last year, ever since the election, on a dinner table, we talk about, for the first time, about politics, not reality TV stars. We're talking about politics, we're engaging in it, and it's the most exciting time. It's challenging times in America, but the most exciting time to be around.
So on that subject then, in the conversations we've had before, as we warmed up to this, something that came up from a few of us was do something that makes you uncomfortable. Because it's very easy, frankly, to sit around a bunch of friends and say nice things and get a laugh, and everyone feels the same, so you're on safe ground. But in order to reach out to those people that we don't agree with, you have to do something a little bit uncomfortable. You've got to maybe go to a town you've never been to before and enter into a conversation with someone that they're not going to agree with you. So, John, what comes to mind on your side of the country when it comes to difficult conversations and making maybe you or your brand uncomfortable in ways that are going to move the conversation forwards?
Well, I think for us, we've gone to the heart of the matter. So we've been to our factories no matter where they are in the world, and we've seen the good and the bad. And we were having a conversation about 6 months ago talking about the challenges around sustainability and a brand like ours. And at the time we had done this graphic T-shirt that said "It's okay," and one of our someone who advises our brand, they said, "Well, is it okay? Because it sounds like everything you do is hard work and challenges. Like you're always talking about the the trials you come up against. So, we just launched a campaign called It's Not Okay. And we're actually putting that message on products. And when we started, it was really about the environment and, a few of the things that were not okay to us and that we wanted to bring awareness to. But, then the whole Trump thing happened and it became a rallying cry. And so, with that, it's not the happiest message, but it's also, it kind of gets people thinking. They're like, what's not okay? And then you get to tell them about it. So for us, every penny that we make from the proceeds of those products goes also to the Ocean Conservancy to directly clean up the oceans.
It reminds me, in some ways, the current situation reminds me of the situation in the UK in the late 70s, early 80s under Thatcher. And there was a big, and we're going to stop talking about Trump, but there was a big movement, an anti-Thatcherist movement, which gave rise to punk rock and the new romantic movement and all of these musical genres and things which still are resonant today. I bet in some part of this building, when they're playing music that's generic, it's 80s music. I just saw Rick Astley played here. You know what I mean? Like that period in popular culture was really prolific, and not by accident was it under a political situation that people were very unhappy about. So on the 100% positive side, what expectations do we have about what's going to rise up now? And not about fighting, or maybe it's driven by that, but really about positive engagement. Because you're right, Prabal. It's not now about the Jersey Shore or the Geordie Shore. Does anyone watch that? I just saw that for the first time. That is astounding. But it's not about that. Now it's about real things. But it doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to be miserable and whiny. It can be really uplifting and positive.
But look at you guys gave the money back to the ACLU, and they've had the best money-raising year ever. And so I think, regardless of what side you're on, this is a time when human beings are coming together, and I think that's really, that's a powerful message. Yeah. Doing good feels good. It's addicting. Do one thing better, and then you want to keep doing better. Yeah. And I think I can feel that groundswell happening right now.
Well, I guess the good news as well is that we're so international that when a company does something good to satisfy its market in Europe or in Asia, they're doing good already. So they may as well have the same product in the US, where the restrictions perhaps are a little bit different temporarily. So people are driven to do good anyway, and this is not going to get in the way of them. Have you guys seen anything in New York that is sort of new and inventive? I mean, your hats obviously were one example of that. Excuse me, but new and inventive that is sparked by the desire to do good as a contrast to what might be happening elsewhere.
For me, I think something that we see too is like the uncertainty of the future is kind of like a positive thing. Like everything is being shaken up in fashion weeks, from where brands show, how they show, what they're designing. I think that in itself is something positive, and it's uncertain where the rules of now, they're all changing, and that's like the best time to grow and to break out of that, traditional mindset. So I think that's a positive. Like nothing is the same anymore. Everything can be changed, and everything has to work for you, and like people have to realize that and bring that up in conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the expectation of consumers is changing, but also of the leaders. There was the announcement recently by Larry Fink about BlackRock, the world's biggest investment company, which has got $5 trillion. And he said, if any of the directors of the companies they invested in are not looking at climate change and don't have a plan for it, then he'll get rid of them.
Climate change is one of the issues I think that we are facing. And I mean, especially living in America, I see other issues besides climate change, like the minority issues, immigrant issues, Black Lives Matter. Like there's so many things that are important, and I think this is a time that is truly testing our integrity. This is really like in how you show up, where you show up, and what do you do. I think it's extremely important, and for me personally, I think everyone, all of us have a different causes that we are supporting. I have a foundation back home in Nepal, the Shiksha Foundation in Nepal, that we started with educating 12 girls. Now it's gone to 300. For me, and having been brought up in a single mother family, and it's very important that we, and especially after watching the march, and as being a women's wear designer, what I realized was it's extremely important that we empower our girls and women. That is extremely important, because I think that is really, truly, for me personally, that is the only way. Like having lived in Nepal, in the villages, when you give money to a woman, like a wife, she takes care of the family, and the man, he goes and spends in drinking. So that's the reality. And I grew up in a world like that, so for me, I think that's my cause, that's my thing. And with the last show, when I put out all the T-shirts and everything, we too, donated the money to Planned Parenthood, ACLU, and my foundation back home in Nepal. So all those stuff are important things. It's engaging people, it's the community, and I think there was one person actually. I did get a backlash, just so that you know, after putting the T-shirts on the runway, I did get a backlash. And they were like, oh, Dior had already done it, so now you're doing it. And for me, I was like, yes, they've done it. I've acknowledged it on the runway, thanking Maria and Shimamanda, but the conversation of change, inclusion, all that stuff is not one person's, thing. You continue forward.
There's no it as well, is there? They've done it. They've empowered women on the runway. We're done now.
Yeah, but and my biggest fear is, for me, it's like a lifelong message. It's always been that. Yeah. I don't want it to be a trending topic. I think that's what is alarming for me.
Yeah, the irony is that given the current situation, it could be, if we're lucky, that empowering women is actually the wrong word to use. It was explained to me recently. That's kind of patronizing, so I apologize for that. But the gender equality is been brought into the forefront now, so it can be addressed in places where really it wasn't really talked about because they didn't have to. But now everyone's face has been shoved in it, and we have to address it, as we should anyway. And maybe we're going to come out of this in a much better place than we wanted, because we've all got something to fight against.
May I ask you, why do you think? I wasn't aware of it. Why is empowering women?
I think the suggestion is that someone has to give them power rather than them
having.
Well,
here's the thing. Maybe in a first world country like this, that's a reality where you have the luxury of doing that. In a country like Nepal or in India, in remote villages, the reality is completely different. So empowering, the idea of empowering, the idea that they might have a voice, they might have a right in equality, is it even a possibility? I think that's something we need to and I don't think we can't sit here and think that a women's equality, what happens in America and the first world country, is applicable to the rest of the world. So I think that's something that we need to be very aware of.
Yeah. It's an excellent point. So we are drawing to the end, so I want to make sure that each of us has a chance to leave the audience with something. What do we, Prabal, you've got a few rounds of applause, so I suspect people are going to be walking away with tweeting galore about what you've been saying.
One more round of applause is fine by me. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. I'm just kidding.
Hashtag applause.
I wish I could end that. Maybe I should have ended that. All I'm asking from here is, as I have been recently, engaging and all that stuff, is just for us all to be aware, awake, and I think everyone here is already converted. So we're preaching to the choir,
just one
right?
Point, remember?
It's just one more person, that uncle, that aunt, that neighbor who probably never saw, never heard your voice, understood. Maybe if we can change that one person.
All right, Dao-Yi?
Yeah.
It sounds, I think, pretty cliche, but I think that the power is in the people, for sure. And the conversation needs to not only start with us, but continue with us. That, certainly we saw a whole groundswell after the elections in the States and after Brexit and things like this. And it can't just be during those times, that it needs to keep going and keep.
Right.
We can't just have the political conversations at the dinner table every 4 years. And that's
Sorry,
what has gotten us in trouble.
We're running out of time. Sorry, Dao-Yi. Max?
I was just going to say do something and try to continue to do something. As simple as that. I think even in the past, Prabal and I connected and a group of people connected when Black Lives Matter was a huge thing, and we actually dropped the ball on that. And it's still something that I think about daily and how to fix that and how to really push that, because I didn't have an answer, and we sat there on emails and calls and tried to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
But it's top of mind, and it's really just trying to talk about it and try to figure out what that goal is, or if it's about sustainability, just really do something and make sure it's top of mind and to keep going and keep trying.
John?
Do one thing better. Change one conventional fiber to a preferred fiber. Change one supplier to one that shares your values. It's not okay to remain unaware.
Right.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
And I would offer...
Okay, John.
And I would offer, engage with someone you don't agree with. Find someone you know you don't agree with and have a conversation with them. Because it's tough.
Right now.
Yeah, it's really easy to not do that, but do that. And with that, thank you very much, Eva, This is a wonderful event. Keep up the fine work, and we are finished. Thank you,
very
everyone.
much.